according to the cover story of today's New York Post, the finest publication in the land. The White House has been secretly flying thousands of migrants from Texas to Westchester County Airport, New York. Yeah, we're told most of them are children. And the flights have been taking off and landing in the middle of the night. So where are the migrants going once they land? Apparently, they're being put on buses and sent to housing facilities on Long Island, maybe, or perhaps to foster families in New Jersey, and God knows where else. Only the Lord knows. The Lord Joe Biden. As we've all seen, the U.S.-Mexico border has been completely overwhelmed. The president doesn't seem to have any sort of a plan, let alone the MIA vice president. Where the hell is she? Today on Fox, Arkansas Republican Senator Tom Cotton said there's a reason why this is all happening at night. Tom?
Look, if they were proud of their policy, if they thought it was a political winner for them, they'd be having these flights in the middle of the daytime. They'd be coordinating it with the local TV stations. They'd be celebrating what they view as a great accomplishment. But they know that Joe Biden's open border policy is a political disaster. So they're trying to hide the consequences of that policy in the dark of night.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't mind more open borders, but I will not tolerate that and a welfare state. Everyone is doing it all wrong. Naturally, the White House has a very well thought out response to all of this. Just kidding. They're only taking issue with what constitutes the middle of the night. Jen?
Why is the administration flying thousands of migrants from the border to Florida and New York in the middle of the night?
Well, I'm not sure that it's in the middle of the night, but let me tell you what's happening here. It is our
4:29 a.m.
Well,
very early in the morning.
Here we are talking about early flights, earlier than you might like to take a flight.
Jesus Christmas. It's always semantics with these people. Why can't you just be straightforward about what's going on? Well, technically, it's not the night, it's the morning. Maybe you don't want to get up at 1 in the morning to take a 2:30 flight. Word vomit. But does desperation like this just prove they're in way over their heads? Let's meet tonight's party panel and discuss everything, including we've got Washington Examiner, senior political columnist and American Enterprise Institute resident fellow Tim Carney is back in front of a lovely barn door. We're also joined by 2020 Libertarian Party vice presidential candidate. He is in the office at the bank where apparently he's trying to get a second mortgage. Good job. Spike Cohen. Woo! And she's new to the showroom, attorney and Democrat strategist Kelly Hyman. I've been told to be very adult.
Hi, Kennedy.
While introducing you, Kelly Hyman. So
yeah, you're not going to tell her where she is? What happened there?
Right. Her last name's Hyman. Okay. Tim Carney, I will start with you. Why so secretive?
Well, it's Tom Cotton is right that they're embarrassed about what they're doing. They've created this disaster at the border, and they don't know how to deal with it, so they're trying to do it under the cover of darkness. And what's amazingly ironic is that they've gotten the whole Democratic Party has decided that they are the only ones who are pro-democracy, like Democratic with a small d. And they've gotten the major media on their side. Oh, well, we're not against the Republicans. We're against these anti-democratic forums. If you are deliberately using the power of government to hide what you're doing from the people, that's anti-democratic. There is no rule of the people if you're hiding it from them. So that's what's got to be put to Joe Biden. Why is he running an anti-democratic immigration policy? That's a question they need to ask him.
But they won't answer it. Jen Psaki will find a way to tap dance around even the most straightforward question that really requires an adult answer. She won't do that. So, Spike,
she might
is this
even tango around.
Yeah, she might. She might do the two-step, the tango, the foxtrot, the mashed potato. She's quite adept. Spike, is this the way to exhibit immigration in this modern era?
No, of course not. And as someone that routinely flies at 2 and 3 and 4 in the morning, I'm offended because I absolutely am flying in the middle of the night, and she should have tried to change that. That is the middle of the night where everyone should be asleep, except for me. Listen, this is not, you mentioned open borders. This is not a libertarian or free market system of immigration that we're seeing. This is government flying their mess around the country, right? So this is a combination of 3 main things: the war on drugs, the war on migration, and to a lesser extent, the welfare state. The Biden administration wants to show they're so much more compassionate than the Trump administration, even as the cages, or I'm sorry, overflow migrant facilities, they're not cages anymore ever since Biden got in. Now that they're filling up up to the brim. They're having to now move them around the country to try to, hide what is happening at the border. And I'm certain that when they get there, they're being lined up with social workers who are signing them up for welfare benefits, which that's not why they came here. They came to escape the drug cartels that are killing them in their own countries. And because they're not able to then come here and seek a better life in a legal way, they're put in cages and camps, and now they're being disseminated across the country. This is every step of why government planned anything ends up sucking so much.
He's absolutely right, Kelly. And the only logical response here is for Congress to act and create systems that are more humane, because what they've got here, it is inhumane, it is immoral, it is unacceptable, especially when you're flying kids around. And the reason they're doing it in the middle of the night is so no one pays attention, so no one knows when they're leaving and where they're going, which is incredibly cruel. Because Tim Carney's absolutely right. In a democracy, especially one where a free press is codified in the First Amendment, we're supposed to know exactly what our government is doing. We're allowed to ask questions and to speak truth to power through the press. They have mostly abdicated that responsibility. So if they're not going to do that, and immigration is the only thing left, since infrastructure is not going to pass, why doesn't Congress take that up?
Well, that's a $64,000 question, but we have to remember, I would disagree with you, Kennedy. I don't think it's secretive. We all know about it. We're all discussing it. They have to be flight plans in place when they fly as well. But we have to think about the real issue about these young children, and we are a great nation. We have to remember that we are a country of immigrants, and we have every right to protect our border, but this is a humanitarian issue about these young children. And absolutely, there should be some kind of resolution. We should, no matter if you're Republican or Democrat or Libertarian, we should come together and have some kind of plan and work together, because this is horrific, these young children. I mean, the idea of the cartel and human trafficking, I mean, no one believes in that and stands for that. So there definitely needs to be some kind of change.
Between July and August of this year, there were 37,800 unaccompanied minors that showed up at the border. And that was just in 2 months, a 655% increase over 2020. And it just makes you wonder, what has this government done to disincentivize that? I don't think they've done anything, Tim. And, it's like, you have a large family. You know how much energy it takes to care for one child, let alone almost 38,000 of them. And that's the inhumane part, not having a plan and not telegraphing what you're doing with these people. God knows what lies ahead of them.
Yeah, if you wanted the open borders that you want, Kennedy, this is not the way you would do it. But the sad thing is that Joe Biden undid a Trump-era policy that was at once harsh and humane. That was a policy called Remain in Mexico. What it said is that if you show up at our border and present yourself seeking asylum, you're going to get your day in court, but you're not going to be able to wait here in the U.S. Why did he do that? Well, I don't know Trump's motivations, but I know the effect was that there was not this giant flood of people crossing all of Central America, risking their lives, putting themselves at the hands of cartels and human smugglers, and then ending border camps. And so even if you assign the best motives to Joe Biden, he wanted to welcome more asylum seekers here. The consequence is what you saw under those highways, and then the way they're trying to cover it up from these sort of filthy dens where you crowd all these people that we have no room for, is these secret flights. So the humane policy was for us to issue Trump's Remain in Mexico policy. Biden did it, I think, for one reason. He got rid of that rule because it was Trump derangement syndrome.
But that's what they're doing. They're putting people on planes because the optics are so bad. That's what they're more concerned about. They're more concerned about optics than they are about children, and shame on them for that. Now, meanwhile, I'm not a huge Ted Cruz fan, but this is some first-class trolling. He's introducing a bill to own the libs and to curb the border crisis in a new way. The fix? Send the migrants to liberal hotspots. Watch.
Their entire political strategy is based on secrecy. What is happening at our southern border is an absolute tragedy. I've introduced legislation today in the Senate It's called the Stop the Surge Act. Well, what my bill does is it designates new ports of entry so rich Democrats can be sitting there and suddenly see 10, 20, 30, 50,000 illegal immigrants like we're seeing in Texas on a daily basis, and I can just envision them in Nantucket sipping a martini going, oh goodness, they want to come to our clubs. They would be horrified.
I think it would be fantastic. Golf clap, Senator. But what's really going to solve the problem? Spike, because you have the long-term problem, which is the fallout from the drug war, and you have the short-term problem, which is overcrowding in what were cages under President Trump, but under President Biden, they're day camps.
Yeah, they're Joe Biden kiddie camps now. The for their safety and health. If Ted Cruz was serious about this, I would wonder why he's okay with resettling migrants up north in the cover of dark, as long as then they're put in cages once they get there, because that actually not only does that cost more, but it's also inhumane to begin with. But yeah, I mean, I think the point he's making is that you have politicians who are implementing these ideas because they know it doesn't affect them. They know, and I know I'm getting ahead of the notes here, but we're seeing that with the supply chain. We're seeing that with every aspect of our society where government makes the best of plans, fully cognizant of the fact that it's not going to affect them. But, the reason that you have people sending their children, you mentioned 40,000 children, unaccompanied minors. Imagine the choice a parent has to make to send their child off with people they don't know to possibly be put in cages, knowing that's better than the alternative of them being murdered at home by drug narco cartels that are being set up by the CIA and other foreign governments because of the war on drugs. We have to address that, or they're going to keep coming here because they're trying to escape being murdered. And whatever is done to them here is not as scary as being murdered back home.
Yeah, and what's being done to them, not only here, but on the way here, it's awful. It's unthinkable. And yes, those parents love their children, and they are making this horrible choice. And Kelly, if the vice president were serious about finding the root causes of this intense migration problem, she would start with the drug war. She hasn't even mentioned that.
Well, I would disagree with you on that, Kennedy. I definitely think we need to come up with a solution. Absolutely. These young children and human trafficking, I mean, as I stated before, this is a humanitarian issue.
What part do you disagree
this shouldn't
with?
Be a political issue.
You disagree that the drug war hasn't had these consequences, these direct consequences from narco-terrorists taking over, enriching themselves, and running these countries into the ground, their citizens be damned? What part of that do you disagree with?
I was disagreeing with the part about our vice president. She has met with the presidents of other countries as well.
Has she talked about the drug war?
And said
has she talked about the root causes and the consequences of the drug war?
I wasn't there at the meetings of their meetings. I mean, if you were there and you want to give me some insight to it as well, I wasn't there, but I definitely know that it was an issue and it definitely was as.
I'll bet you $1,000 she never mentioned anything about the drug war. $1,000.
Okay. All right, I'll bet you $1,000, Kennedy. I'm in. Let's see. Let's hear the meeting and let's find out what exactly happened. I don't know if we're going to know the exact whole meeting.
I can't wait. I love money. Thank you, Kelly. Last word, Tim.
No, absolutely. Thank you, Kennedy. I appreciate it.
Oh, I would appreciate it if the vice president were a serious person and would talk about what the drug war has done to some of these Central American countries. She'll never do it, and she certainly won't do it publicly. Go ahead, Tim.
Kamala is a cop.
Yes.
You took my line. You took my line.
Taxation is theft. End the Fed. All right.